Hello, Golden Matters, episode 3. We have a very special person here today. This is my mom, Judy Goletz. And today's, although she's very fun and we have a lot of laughs, our theme today is not so fun and it's about loss. So, my dad passed away, 2012, so 13 years ago. And I have my mom to chat with today. And first, we're going to have her share her life and how long ago she got married and all of those experiences.
Well, my whole life. That's a
Your whole
challenge. Yes. So, from my perch at 72 years of age, it's been an interesting life, a challenging life. I hope there's a lot more of it left. I got married in 1972 and had my first child, my son, a year later. And then there was this period of time where I expected more children and they just failed to show up. So then we got lucky and had 3 girls 15 months apart. So you got to be careful about what you pray for. I had the best time being a mom when my kids were little. You guys were a lot of fun. Yeah, especially you. I saved the best for last, apparently. But they really were. I think I'm glad at the time that I knew I was having a great time. Your dad traveled a lot, so I was on my own a lot. I'm glad that I knew at the time to stand still and even on difficult days, take a breath and say, this is the best in life. Because it was, and it still is. And I think that's important to remember in the moment, that it pretty much doesn't get much better until the grandkids show up.
And why every parent is anxious for their kids to have kids?
Probably. But I think you just want to fill the house again. And that's important, is because the silence can be deafening.
And tell me about Dad and your marriage and all that.
Oh, there's a roller coaster for you. Dad was a very busy man, and I had always said growing up that I wanted to marry somebody with the intellect that my dad had and shared some of the same characteristics. He loved reading. He loved great music. He was an opera fan. He knew the librettos to a bunch of them, which I did not. I could only hum along. And he had a real breadth and depth of interest in so many different things. It was fun to tag along with his mind. But, like in every marriage, there's lots of challenges. And you just have to figure out how to meet them and get through it. And sometimes it requires space, and it always requires time.
Now, what anniversary did you get to?
Well, we just barely missed getting to celebrate the 40th.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yep. I did have quite the soiree that you children gave us for our 25th. We almost made the Ruby anniversary, but not quite.
40's Ruby?
40 is Ruby.
I didn't know that. So
Yep.
how did you and Dad meet?
Oh, Dad and I, if we had not met on the day we met, you would not be here.
Profound loss.
Yeah. I was already tucked in bed. I had an early shift at the hospital, was in my PJs, and my housemate, who I actually wasn't real close friends with, not sure why she wanted me to be there, but she was at a pool party at the apartment building where I had previously lived.
And this is in Arizona.
Yes, this is in Arizona. And she said, we're all gathered around the pool. It's a lot of fun. There's some interesting people here. You have to come. And I resisted emphatically. So I said no. I have very little gas in my car. And at the time, I had a 1968 gas guzzling Camaro, which I loved.
A muscle car.
Yes, I had to have enough gas to get to work and home from work. So I hung up after saying no, and she called about half a dozen times more.
Oh my.
So having exhausted me and my resistance was low, I did get up, got dressed, drove to the party. And not only was it iffy for me to be there, but it was iffy for Dad to be there because he had only gone there once with this group of friends. And he said he never had contact with them again after that.
Oh.
So if we hadn't both gone that night, we would have never crossed paths at all. So I went to the party And we had a nice time. And then he said, well, can I drive you home? I accepted, and he drove me home. And then he said, want to stop for ice cream? Well, he had me at ice cream. I thought, okay, you're worth, paying more attention to. So we did. And 31 Flavors kind of became our spot. And we just started going out together.
Lucky dog.
Yeah. It was a moment in time when those planets crossed.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yes.
And normally we go walk a mile in your shoes right now, but I think we need to first 13 years ago when we lost Pops.
Okay.
So walk me that mile, and then we'll get into your now mile.
Okay. They had, actually, he probably would have passed away even sooner if it had not been for you, because he looked like he had the mumps, but only on one side. And you were very concerned. And I was concerned, but you were more vocal. He wore me down by resisting not wanting to see a doctor.
He was the classic. He had a big lump here.
Yep.
And
His bump.
And I said, Dad, this is not normal. And he was like, walk it off. Let's just walk it off. You can't walk off alone.
Well, he would have convinced himself he just needed a dentist. He figured it would resolve itself in time.
So what did Dad end up having?
Well, it turned out that he actually had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that was not a good finding. And so we then threw ourselves into the same thing most families do, is research.
Find clinical trials and different.
You Google what the good sides are and the bad sides, and then you start researching where you want to be treated. And at the time, Dad had promised me that at some point when we were done raising kids, in which we were mostly, I'm still trying to raise you, but he had said that I could go back to where I used to live, the Chicago area, because I'm definitely a 4 seasons person.
You're a 1 season person. Cold.
Yeah, cold. Cold is good. And so after all those years in California, I forced him to make good on his promise. And then I proceeded to Chicago, found a house there, signed paperwork, and Dad was still in California working.
Yeah.
And I spent the ensuing years flying back and forth to be with Dad. He was living with you because the house was gone. There was nowhere for him to live.
He's a great roommate.
I had made an agreement with him that even though I was in Chicago, and it would have been wonderful if he had been there the whole time, I had said, this is your call. You need to make the decision about where you want to be treated and who's going to treat it. So he chose the City of Hope in California, which I'm very glad he did. I know we have a lot of great cancer centers in this country, but the City of Hope was definitely where he needed to be. He was lucky because he had very attentive children and a wife that didn't mind flying. When he had apheresis, you would drive all the way up to the City of Hope, and just to keep him company, you would sort of curl up on the bed he was being treated on, and sometimes you even came up there, just took a nap. Well,
my laptop.
Yeah, with your laptop. And that meant the world to him. But the fact that you were there and he wasn't going through it alone.
Well, I was the representative.
I knew he was in good hands.
I think he made it the longest he could have.
I do too. I think Kerry was able to do as much as she did because she also had a husband who joined the...
Is a saint.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
But he joined into it like any son would. And I think one of my favorite fun memories was when he had just gotten out of isolation, which was tough because that was 30 days, but I was able to be in isolation with him. So he probably maybe would have preferred I not be there. But I remember you and Jared went and found toys to play with while Dad was hanging out. And they showed up at the hospital and took a stool, 4-legged stool, turned it upside down, and turned it into a ring toss.
There was ring toss, and then we did a plastic bowling set.
So
he could bowl from the side of his bed, knock the pins down on the other side.
And he loved it. And there was an awful lot of noise and hilarity going on. And I remember we stuck our head out because his room was right across from the nurse's desk, and said, "Is this okay? Are we making too much noise?" And thank goodness the nurse looked up and she said, "No, it's a joy to hear laughing on this floor." She said, "Not only do we appreciate it, but the patients appreciate it." And then when Dad got to feeling a little more mobile, he would go and visit all the other patients on his floor. So he had his mission, which was when he felt well enough, he would go visiting and assure all the other patients that whatever they were going through, they were going to be okay. They could handle it. So he was a good support for himself and for other people.
So he passed 2012, March 2012.
Yes. Well, I even told him, even though he couldn't hear me, but I've also told everybody else that he was a very blessed man, because if I passed away in the circumstances he did, I would consider it such a blessing, because we had a hospital bed delivered. He was in the dining room, and my daughter's home had a beautiful triptych of arches that looked out onto the park across the street and the woods beyond that. And there would be these beautiful sunsets with the sun dipping behind the trees. And we oriented the bed so it faced out. The kids all drew pictures, and we taped them to the windows so that he could see them whenever he opened his eyes. That, I don't think, from the time he was brought downstairs, I don't think he ever was left alone. There was always somebody with him, always.
Yeah. That was a few days, maybe a week.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
And then I think it was a solid week that he was not truly conscious. It's like we all just moved in with him. I don't think anybody can have a more blessed passing than being completely surrounded by family and hearing the laughter and just hearing kids' sounds.
Yeah.
And door slamming and kids, in and out, and the laughter. And we played some of his favorite music. I don't know how you get much luckier.
So I'm going to fast forward you
Okay.
to your now. Walk a mile in your current shoes, in having been without a dad now for 13 years.
Yep.
What is that like? And any challenges that
Plenty of those.
I know, particular to him now not being here. And then on top of that, any challenges that people might be surprised by, that, like the obvious ones to me would be like, okay, maybe you're lonely. Maybe if you weren't financially sound before, you're now stuck with these bills that you have no idea how to even pay.
Right.
Things like that. Those seem more obvious. So that may exist for you as well. But then also anything that might be surprising to somebody.
Well, a little thing that hasn't gone away is something really little, but it's always like this reminder that he's gone that never goes away. And that's something as simple as grocery shopping. Because when you've been married for almost 40 years, there's a reflexive shopping. You reach for something because you've reached for it for 40 years.
Oh, like canned tomatoes?
God, yes. Canned tomatoes to make his dreadful concoction of macaroni noodles and tomatoes, and he called it a soup. But there's all the things that he loved. You'll be going down the aisle and someone has been out of your house for 13 years and you're still reaching for it. And as you're reaching, you're thinking, oh no, I really don't need that. But that's a constant reminder. It's a simple household task that it's surprising when it happens.
Speaking of grocery stores, we still use his phone number for the, what do you call that? The loyalty number?
Oh, the loyalty.
We still use his number.
To get the sale price, yes.
We still use it.
That's really,
which is actually kind of fun.
I didn't know that.
Sometimes we'll get coupons in the mail for him. It's pretty funny.
That also is something that has pretty much tapered off, but that always is something when you lose a spouse that you have to be prepared for, is that for several years you'll still get mail from them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't bother me, but there'll be other times that it's like a sharp stick to the eye. It hurts.
Yeah.
And you end up conjuring up memories that you'd rather do without that day.
What about music?
Music is just a source of comfort always.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's comfort and joy because his love of it is something we shared. Girls' operas,
Oldies.
played,
Real oldies,
yeah,
not what
real
they call oldies
oldies.
now.
Um, he knew so much about music and composers, and that's just something that was a shared love. And we both, were very, very much wanting to pass that on to our children and our grandchildren. And it was an important part of our lives. I think during his lifetime, music had brought him a great deal of joy. And it is something to be shared.
For you, it's a happy thing.
Yeah, it's a very happy thing.
Like as far as that goes.
Yeah, there are different composers we both loved, and listening to that music now is always a comfort.
Well, that's good. I
And
like that there's a comfort in the loss as well, because
Yeah.
I would think overwhelmingly it's extremely sad.
Is a huge blessing to have that, because all I have to do is close my eyes and he's there and he's listening with me.
So that could
And
be kind of an interesting recommendation as I think of something we want to do on a podcast is provide solutions to people that may not be thinking of that. So in this case, I'm starting to think, well, it might be interesting for someone dealing with loss to go back to music. I think everyone universally has at least one song
yes,
that brings memories. Maybe it could be a source of joy
yes.
instead of sadness.
He really had looked forward to doing the father-daughter dance with you at your wedding. And I think that was something that was a huge disappointment to him. Is it because of the neuropathy in his feet that doing that dance was,
We still cut a rug.
yeah, you did in your own way.
It's just, what's the word? Dialed back.
Yes,
Yeah.
a dialed back dance.
Is there anything else about the now that is challenging on the challenging side of
Oh,
loss?
that's a very long list.
I know. So give me two.
Well, I wish he was around to change brakes now.
Okay.
I'm not, he
So a
was
functional thing.
very functional thing. He was always really good with cars, and that came from his dad. And, his love was a 55 Chevy, and that he could dismantle and put back together. I think that was a source of pride for him. And every time he fixed a car, I think that was a connection for him to his dad. But yeah, I miss a lot of things. Of course, everybody does when you lose a spouse, but I miss the shared history. That is a really big thing for me, is that when you lose a spouse, you lose the one person that can equally share a memory, a lot of different memories, but especially about your children. And when your children, even when they're adults, they don't necessarily want to hear about all those events for the fifth time.
Never.
You've never, of course, you've never said it, but it's hard because when I see my grandchildren repeating a behavior or an experience that we had with you, when I recall it with you, it's not the same as recalling it with your dad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Recalling it with him, it was a piece of glue that held part of the marriage together. After raising 4 kids, you had that shorthand, and you didn't even need to finish the story. You missed that connection that you can dig up that memory. He would never get tired of hearing about it.
Yeah.
Another parent is somebody that you can share your pride in your kids and never have to apologize for it. You can be in the room with other parents, and there's only so much of bursting your buttons that you can do. But with the other parent, you can drone on endlessly about how wonderful your kids are or what they've accomplished with their lives.
They'll never tire.
Yeah, they'll never tire of it. And that's hard for me because, among other losses, that's a loss for me not to get to share it with him now. And so I feel bad. It's a loss for him that he's not here to appreciate those accomplishments.
And the new one.
And he's not here to see your son.
Yeah.
And that's hard. But I have to remember at the same time, he was very blessed to see 7 other grandchildren come into the world. I'd like to think that wherever his spirit is, that he's paying attention and loves it as much as if he were here.
I think he does.
So
thanks, Mom. I need to ask you, I have to read this one a little bit. I don't know if this pertains to you, but it's very real. So it's called the widowhood effect, which I know most people have heard of, maybe not the that name of it, but it's essentially the broken heart syndrome.
Right.
So that is when one spouse is left behind after one passes, and that spouse has a greater increased mortality risk, especially within the first 90 days. And this is the part I'm going to read. There's research showing the physical and mental tolls of the widowhood effect are even greater for those who are also caregivers to their spouse before they passed, which was you for like a decade. And so, did you feel any of that? I mean, obviously, you're still here, as far as I can
So
tell.
far, so
So
good.
far, so good. And we're well past 90 days. But I feel like you hear stories like that all the
Mhm.
time. In those 90 days, did you feel the intensity of any of that? Or since you're still here, thank goodness, is there any kind of residual of having been the caregiver that does make it more intense for you?
Well, first of all, I'd love to see data on gender specific because I have all my life, I have read and heard the stories about how men really have a harder time when their wife goes first because they all know, especially for older generations, they now all of a sudden are doing tasks that they have not been doing, like cooking dinner, taking care of the laundry, and ironing shirts.
Mhm.
And I know nobody irons anymore, but I do. And there are just so many life tasks that men have to take on when their wife passes. But I understand that the recent research says the exact opposite,
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
which is why I'd like to see the data and the sources for it.
Well, it looks like the reason it was female, and I'll do more digging on this, but was because the females, and men probably do this too, but this specific thing was saying female, when they're caretaking, especially for so long. So the greater they're caretaking, the more it's detrimental to their own health and well being because they're so focused on the person they're taking care of.
Right.
They miss doctor's appointments, they miss even dumb things like a haircut, and kind of their health just degrades, or they'll miss medication, or they won't pick it up. And so, in that sense, once the spouse passes, it doesn't now revert to you taking better care of yourself. It actually stays the same
Because it's
or
been a
gets,
habit not
yes,
to take care of
or
yourself.
gets worse because now you're also dealing with all those other effects of losing a spouse.
Right.
That's what this article was saying, which to me makes sense.
Yeah, got it. But like I said, this is something that's been, for decades. I've been hearing that it's the men that really have a hard time adjusting. Also, women, I think wives are very much the ones that are the holiday people. They're the ones that bring the family together for holidays
The planner.
and birthdays. And exactly, they do all the planning. They are the ones that make the celebrations in life happen. And when you lose your wife, men don't have that. And nor do they have the skill set really to do it because it is a skill to gather family together, you know, get everybody's schedule pulled together so that you can all show up at the same time. And also ironing out some negative relationships in the family. They're the menders. They get that done. And a lot of men don't have that skill set nor actually the interest, especially if you're grieving. You don't know, they don't have the energy to do it. And it does take a lot of energy to make those things happen. And that is a huge loss. I mean, to have an adult child's birthday come around and just
Nothing happened.
nothing happens. And you don't get to see the grandkids that day. And there isn't a sharing of all that person's memories during a birthday party. And I think for a lot of men, that's very hard. And it's also difficult socially because usually it's the wives that call friends and get everybody together for a barbecue or a 4th of July celebration. And those days just seem to dwindle away. And so you lose the sense of a rhythm to your life. The seasons and each season's celebrations, when they don't happen, your life, the quality of your life is diminished. And that brings just almost a pervasive undercurrent of sadness and a lack of meaning
Hmm.
to your life.
That makes me actually wonder that men could be the ones perhaps that suffer from that more often. It didn't happen to you. Again, thank gosh.
Yeah.
Probably because you were on what you were just describing. You were able to still plan, find family
Right.
together, and you still probably planned and executed on the normal stuff, which maybe got you through it.
I think so. I'm surprised at the 90-day framework because for so many people, including myself and your sister, who told me after dad had passed away, he'd been gone for about a year, that the fog was just lifting for her. And all those months, she hadn't realized what a fog she had been living in.
Wow.
And I think part of that is when you lose a family member, you definitely, and it is a blessing that you are wrapped in a blanket of amnesia about a lot of things. And then even when that amnesia part goes away, there's a fog that still follows you around. I do think it's a protective layer that your mind gifts you with. And that's why I'm a little surprised about the 90-day time frame, because I couldn't have died because I wouldn't have known how. I remember having to renew a driver's license. And I was like a little girl. What's my address? Because we had just moved and I couldn't remember it. And
It's the fog.
yeah, and I used to call you my banker because numbers and finances and all of that was like being on Mars. And so I really needed to depend on other people. It's a struggle because when you lose a spouse, you also don't want to lose your identity. And for me, that's still a struggle. I'm not anybody's wife. I'm just not, even to to my children, to the rest of my family. There is a absolute shift in the way family members relate to me because I'm not part of this pair anymore. Even really little things like when I was raising the kids, I was the driver. I was when dad was alive, he drove and I would be on the right side, but in the front seat. I'm not in the front seat anymore. I'm back with the kids. I got demoted to the back seat.
That's for safety purposes.
Yes, well, of course. And that's a very odd
shift.
Yeah, it's a very odd shift when you're no longer the adult in charge. You're the oldest person of your age, but you're not in charge anymore. You know, you can
Are
make
you asking me to drive?
I can make strong suggestions, like even the first Christmas, I remember being in your family room and all you kids were together and Christmas was my area. I owned it. I produced it. I made it happen. And it was my gift. I've always believed in that adage that Christmas and holidays, Hanukkah, all those big celebrations are a mother's gift to her family. And when all of a sudden, without any warning, you guys are all discussing what to have for breakfast on Christmas, I'm going, what do you mean? We've always had the exact same thing. And it was shocking to me to find out that my children didn't regard me as the person that would produce Christmas. That was an adjustment.
See, and then from our perspective, we feel like it's a lot of work. So we would take that on. Like, why would we put that on you?
Because it's mine. That's why.
Because I said so.
Exactly. But that's also, I think, that's a really important issue is when you have the loss of the spouse, your identity radically changes. Not only to your family, it changes to the outside world. It changes to your friends. Sometimes friends don't want you to be the odd woman that shows up. Everybody comes in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you're putting that in disarray. And fortunately, I think socially now a lot of that has gone away. People are not threatened by a singleton anymore.
Wouldn't think so.
I really have to be grateful to the younger generations who just don't think that way at all anymore.
You're not lesser than.
Yeah, lesser than, nor a threat. And there are some women that would not want to invite a newly widowed woman because they're a threat. I don't threaten anybody except really cute dogs. But that is an issue. And the loss of identity is a huge issue. So maybe on one of your other podcasts, you can get into that because you're lost.
We actually talked about that with retirement too. Because
yeah,
then the more you're involved in your career and how many hours, you're spending every week
Right.
there, the greater the potential loss of identity when you retire. So
Exactly.
it's obviously not the same loss, but similar.
But it's still a loss, and you have to find a way to find your balance again
Hmm.
and re-engineer your identity. And that can be a real challenge.
So here's a good next question for you. The world is a difficult place, I think, for the aging folks in this land.
In
So
so many
in
ways.
terms of loss, is there something you would change about the way the world is set up for older folks to deal with loss? Is it resources or is it just something that has to be dealt with? Is it family knowing more?
Yeah. It's hard to speak about family because I only have my family pretty much to draw from. And my family has rallied, and all four of you have done your bit in one way or another, supportive of me and looking back, supporting dad, which made so much easier. But you still have to find your way. There's still boundaries that I have to renegotiate in my relationship with all four of my kids. Having me over is different than having your mom and dad over. What you do is different. The activities you even do together are different. And so you are creating a whole new construct of who you are, what our relationship is, how we spend our time together, even what's appropriate to joke about. Um, that all is different based on being widowed and still being part of a pair. I really notice it so much when we're all together, and there is a distance that happens when it's just things that between a couple that are a given. And no matter how much you care or how much you try to be inclusive, the person that is single is indeed single. You're still the outlier, no matter how wonderful everybody else is. You're still a little bit on the outside looking in.
Just so you know. I don't think any of us have consciously thought, oh, mom's a singleton. But now that you're pointing it out, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
For me, it's because that is my new identity.
Yeah.
I am a singleton now. As far as what the world could do better, it's a very long list.
Should we put those in the show notes?
Yeah. For grocery
Appendix.
stores, please go back to paper coupons, because for people who have issues with their sight or issues with even understanding how your damn phone works, when you're trying to and when you're a senior on a fixed income, you got to save every penny.
Mm.
And it's really irritating to go to the store and the things that are at a discount, you have to use your digital coupon. There are no more paper coupons. So shopping takes days in the grocery store. Bring a cot, because you're going to be standing in the aisles looking on your phone for how you can claim that digital coupon and get your 50 cents off for that laundry soap. And if you don't do it, or you can't see it, or you click on it and nothing happens, then you feel stupid, ignorant, and poor.
And you're
all at the
standing
same
in
time.
line feeling flustered.
Exactly.
I could see that.
So that's very difficult.
So I have two last moments for you. Number one, as I want to hear a story, can be anything. A little story time moment.
Okay.
Literally anything. It doesn't have to be about dad. And then we'll get into the next part.
Okay.
So any story from your life, silly, unique, memorable, hilarious,
Impactful.
any of it. Yeah.
Probably the one story that I would have to say that is a standalone. It only has to do with me. Nobody else is involved. It's not a story about anybody else. It's only my story. And that's when I was much, much younger and had the opportunity to go to East Germany. That was extremely impactful and in so many ways has shaped my life.
When you were 16?
I was 16 and I went with a friend, and we went several countries in Europe, but because she had family behind what was then called the Iron Curtain, we were both able to get visas to visit her family members in East Germany. And when you talk about culture shock, that would be it. And it is so crystal clear in that trip As an American, you don't forget going through Checkpoint Charlie and having a gun pointed at you while they match the picture in your passport and visa to your own face. And when they go through your luggage with their white pointer stick and point to the luggage they want you to drag out of the back of your VW bus, of course, what else do you travel in? And you have to open it. You know, it was a drizzling rain and we had to open our suitcases on the ground and he would point to things with his little white stick and we had to drag them out. And you don't forget that experience. And you don't forget staying with her family and having this little old aged tiny TV set on the kitchen table that is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's nothing but static most of the time. But they are so desperate for news from the West, they leave it on just to catch whatever might be broadcast and make it through the static. You don't forget one of the aunts going and standing in line all day to bring you a piece of cake. And I used to play the piano in their living room. And that afternoon, I went in to sit down and I opened up the keyboard and there was a plate with a little piece of cake on it. And you don't forget that. And you don't forget listening to the stories of what happened to them and how they lost their home. The father of the family was a doctor. His son was a doctor. And you don't forget how much they lost and how it affected their lives and how they came to cope with all of it, their resilience. And when I left there, you realize how much that experience is not ever going to go away. It's always there. And it's always going to remind you to be grateful and to honor their resilience and to know how important it is to immerse yourself in history. You know, it's not necessarily just the history of a country or a people. It's the history of humanity and how we behave and treat each other through so many generations and the lack of respect for humanity. And that's something that will never leave me, the effect that had on me.
You never told me that part of the story.
I will forever be grateful for that experience.
I'm glad you had it.
And I remember telling my friend that when I came home, I was going to give as much money as I could to American radio. But what made me very joyful was, regardless of Checkpoint Charlie and their white stick, we did get through Life and Look magazines because we were there in 1969 for the moon landing.
Wow.
That was a big deal, and they were gobsmacked that Americans or anybody had gone to the moon.
That's pretty neat.
We also got in George Orwell's 1984, English and German. So there are moments of both pride and glee in that experience.
All right, and the last wrap-up question.
Okay.
Is on your legacy. What is it that you want to leave behind?
I truly hope. This is such an easy question. I want my legacy to be being a bibliophile. I want my children to continue to read. I want my grandchildren to love their books. I want my family to always be interested in making reading accessible to friends, to neighbors, to the community, to be a part of reading as a lifestyle and reading as a resource, and the understanding, even on a very personal basis. If you have a book, you always have a companion, even in your loneliest days. If you have a book, you have a friend. If on your happy days, you have a book to find joy in. When you're grieving, there are books that can help you through it. Books can bring you other people's stories to appreciate and learn from. And books can teach you about the dignity of each individual human and respect for their stories. And I just think books are as good as it gets. And truly, if you can get your hands on a book, and if you have glaucoma like me and it's a challenge, then you can do an audiobook. You can
or have someone read it to you.
Yes. So the gift of the written word is just such an enormous blessing.
You want to pass that?
And I want that to be passed on to my children, and I want my children and my grandchildren to pass it on to the generations that come after them and to pass it on to their communities and spread the word.
Does a podcast count?
Literally. Yes. So all of you out there listening, grab a book. Yes. Charge your Kindle.
Charge that Kindle.
Yes. I can't think of anything that can be as impactful as having access to other people's words. There's just, the learning curve is huge, and the companionship is such a comfort. And at 2 a.m, books don't have open and closing hours.
Mm-hmm.
If you wake up in 3 a.m,
You don't even have to stream it.
no, you don't
You don't
have.
need good internet.
You
don't
don't
need any
need.
of it.
You don't need anything.
Well, thank you, Mom, for being here.
Thank you for having me be.
Thank you. That was really fun. Bye. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Kerry and Corey back in the studio after my conversation with my lovely mom, Judy, centered around loss with my dad. It's been about 13 years now. And although a lot of memories are foggy, there's still some of the emotional probably has stuck around the most. Any of the things involving logistical or any of those kind of loose ends, that part I'm a little more foggy on, but I think the emotional side is what stuck with me the most, and my siblings and my mom.
The thing that stuck out most to me is the stories that she told wasn't focused around really loss and negativity. It was really around the positivity and all the great experiences that they were able to have at the end with your whole family being around. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think something my whole family shared was we felt it's such a weird thing to think. Would you rather go fast and not know, or would you rather have time? It's such an odd question to even think about, but having the time and knowing the trajectory of his disease was a blessing on our side to be able to extend our time with him and then make sure towards the very end that we felt almost like that closure by being able to have music around him. The entire family, all four siblings were there. Any grandkids were there. We were all there. And I know a lot of people don't get that last time with their whomever. So I think we felt extremely fortunate that we were able to do that. And thank God, because I think that is why my mom has such fond memories of that moment, which is a weird thing to say. But if you're going to be able to plan out how that end of life happens for your spouse or any loved one, I think later in life, it's kind of a beautiful thing to look back on. I think of it with oddly fond memories. Of course, I'm sad. I wish my dad were here, but I got to say goodbye. I got to whisper in his ear. I even like snuggled up to him on the little cot that they had in the family room because it was in-home hospice at that point. You know, it's this horribly sad and wonderfully beautiful memory for me.
Yeah. I mean, for somebody that didn't know your family and your father, I think your mother and you, by having the interview with her, was able to really paint a clear picture of what was going on at that time. Number one, she pointed out that hearing is the last thing to go. She made it a point that he was never alone. The family was always around. And then I was able, almost like a movie, I was able to, or reading a book, I was able to visualize what that would look like when he was bowling in the hospital and how that made the nurses really happy because they were hearing laughter on the floor. So that really painted a really vivid picture for me.
Yeah, it's one of my very most favorite memories, walking into the hospital with these bags of toys, essentially. So you think we're going to the children's floor, but nope, we're going to see my dad. And he was always really into games. And so we always used to play. He lived with my husband and I for a few years, and we would always take him to the horseshoe park because he was somewhat limited in what he could do, but he loved horseshoes. So we were trying to mirror his favorite activities when he was in the hospital. So thank goodness for plastic bowling sets and horseshoes, because that's why we were able to do that. It was so much fun.
It also gave me a sense of who he was too, because when he felt at his best, what he did is he went and visited all the other patients. So that just tells me what type of person he was and how he lived his life up to that point.
Yeah, he had, I think, the most positive attitude I've ever witnessed from someone in his condition. He had his port still embedded in his chest that they would do the chemo through. Because after you are a candidate for so much chemo, at some point they put a port in just to make delivery easier on the patient and probably the doctor. So he had that going on. He never felt good. We kind of laughed because when he lost his hair, he kind of looked like Bruce Willis. And we were like, you look really cool. And he was like, yeah. So those things were really fun memories.
I'm curious on when he was diagnosed, it immediately went into, "Hey, let's research what we're gonna do." And that was 12 to 13 years ago. And I'm curious, like, where did you do the research? What did you come up with? And then what do you think has changed today on what you'd be able to, not necessarily that anything would change on the outcome, but what are the resources that are different today that maybe you could have got different information or better information quicker?
I don't remember researching a lot online so much as we called. Maybe at that
Mm,
time it was like right in that pocket of how trustworthy is information online?
mhm.
Do the clinical trials that are available, are those actually all listed online or do you need to call these places? So we called different hospitals. That was a big one. My mom mentioned City of Hope. That's where my dad had his stem cell replacement treatments and all of his infusions. And it was a lot, but a lot of that was phone calls. And then also references with other people, anyone in the network of family or friends who unfortunately had needed a good oncologist as well. So his oncologist was in the Newport Beach area, and that was through reference from a family friend. So a lot of that was actually phone calls. And there was some internet research, but I feel like we were a family that needed to talk to a source of somebody who we could felt like we could trust.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I imagine it's a lot. People dig and dig and dig online, which makes perfect sense to me.
Well, and what makes up for those references that you were getting, personal references you're getting today, when you go online, you can do the research, but it'll always give reviews from people. Is this good? Is this bad? Like, so I think that would probably save people a lot of time today.
That's true. And my mom mentioned her legacy wanting it to be books. She is a huge book person too. So when it
Yeah.
came to the condition itself, she dug in as well to medical journals and anything she could get her hands on related to his condition and comorbidities, things like that, because that was always a fear of ours.
Well, what resonates with me with everybody that we've interviewed up to this point, music is a big part of people's lives. If you're anxious and you're going through things, music soothes you. You know, if you're depressed, you can listen to music, it puts you in a good mood. Even today, you can listen to music that remind you of people that aren't with us anymore. So out of everything that we've talked about or talked to people we've talked to on Golden Matter so far, music seems to resonate with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I know something that my mom and I didn't bring up, I think, because it's kind of a longer story, but it's one of the most powerful, whether you're a spiritually based person, faith based person, I don't think it really matters. I think a lot of people also experience something in nature that is their reminder of somebody. I've heard butterflies a lot. In our case, it's a robin. I have kind of a wild side story on that that I think is kind of something neat to share. And that is when my dad was in the bed in the family room, it was about a week from when we first got down there. And every morning, there would be, from the day he started laying there, there was a robin in the window right by the bed. And every single morning he came back. Then my dad passed away. They took him away. And then the very next morning, there was no robin. However,
Wow.
kid you not, this is the part that sounds fake, but it's very real. My sister opens her front door. It's almost like somebody set us up. It feels like a joke. And I kid you not, in her front porch, sitting on the porch, was a robin's nest with two blue eggs.
Well,
It gives me the chills every time I
that's
talk
so
about it.
cool.
The story extends even more. My mom had mentioned that I was the one who kind of prompted my dad to finally go see an oncologist. And oh, so wild. I literally have goosebumps. I don't know if you can see them, but they're very big. Every time I tell this story. I took him to the oncologist that day and we got not great news that they thought they still had to do the biopsy, but he thought, just to prepare you, this doesn't look great. And we went to a restaurant called Mimi's at the time. It was one of our favorites. And my dad, who I had no clue had any artistic talent, like drawing, I knew he could sing, but drawing and music, but I didn't know he could draw. He's sitting there. I don't know why I had graph paper in my bag, and I don't know how this even happened. But that day, he's sitting there. We sat outside. He's sitting across from me, behind me. He's drawing something, and he gives it to me. And it was a robin. He drew a robin. And I still have it to this day. I dated it and wrote it, and then it's sitting on my piano. And so that's another wild thing.
Wow.
It keeps going. I was in a really, really bad bike accident, and I'm sitting there on the ground, like I had skidded into a ditch, and nobody saw me except one person because it was dusk and they were coming uphill and I was going downhill. And she gets out of her car, and I'm just completely out of it. And she found my phone in my pocket, and she called my husband, and she was like, da, 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 I found her. Guess what her name was?
Robin.
100% true. And she literally saved me.
Wow.
So now my youngest niece, who is 8, her middle name is Robin.
I think there's a movie in here, Kerry. There's a movie someplace. That's awesome.
I literally have goosebumps because robins are so special
Yeah.
in my family. So that's like our thing. And I know other families have those spiritual things.
Yeah. I've heard that cardinals signify people that when they come around, they are people that are checking in from you from heaven.
That's really beautiful too. Those symbols are really important. And I don't think it matters if you're faith-based or not. It's just it's inside you.
You notice they never give ugly birds. It's not like crows coming around or
It's like, yeah. Oh, Dad, that's you. Yeah. That was so messed up. But that is a really funny thought. God's like a pigeon or something.
That's right.
So funny.
One of the things I also heard on there is years after a person passes, there's still things that come around that remind them of not so good times. I think we were talking about this off camera about like mail showing up in a person's name. I also mentioned when I get on Facebook, sometimes you'll see recommendations for connections on people that I know that have passed, or a lot of people are very loosely connected on Facebook where somebody will wish somebody a happy birthday that I know that's been passed for some time. There's got to be some resources out there that we can share with our listeners on how to eliminate those things so you're not constantly reminded of negativity when you don't want to be bothered with those things.
Yeah, that's such a hard one. That's definitely a trigger for me and my mom when we see those mail pieces. You're caught off guard a bit, and it really gets you.
Well, and your dad's been gone 12 or 13 years, and mail still shows up in his name.
The only one I had found thus far that we were chatting about earlier was this deathwithdignity.org, and they're a 501c3 nonprofit. And I thought that was really interesting. They basically are a leader in the US for end of life advocacy. What I liked about them was not only is it the more traditional end of life conversations around advanced directives and estate planning and things like that, it goes beyond that to things like your pets and social media accounts and all of these things that you wouldn't want to leave behind for your family to deal with.
Right.
So I liked that because that's the thing, like you're saying with the mail. Maybe there's also a way to eliminate mails for people who are no longer here.
I mean, as you stated, there's obvious things out there that you would immediately deal with the top 5 or 10 things upon somebody's death, but there are other things that you don't even think about that need to be deleted because if they sit out there and they're inactive, they're probably just a target for hackers anyway.
Yeah, gosh, this really gets into another topic with like spam and all that and people taking identities, social security. How do you protect a social security of your spouse or loved one that passed?
Yeah.
This is just stuff you don't think about at all. Something else my mom and I kept going back and forth on was that broken heart syndrome. And it's funny because afterwards I researched a little bit more. The name of the actual condition, I have to read this, is Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. So that's that heart syndrome. Yeah. And
is that where somebody, spouse dies and then the other spouse dies within like a month?
Exactly. It's like literally broken heart syndrome. I had been reading that women die more from it than men, and that the research I was reading was based on the woman, depending on how long her caretaking has been, will kind of put her health to the side more so than the reverse. And so by the time she's solo, not only does she have all that going on. But now she's also kind of degraded her own health
Mm,
and wellness. So then, though, she was kind of like, well, it would make more sense to me that it was a man because women tend to have greater social networks around them, things like that. I was like, gosh, that makes a lot of sense too. So I looked it up. And I don't want to say we were both right because it's such a not a fun stat to talk about, but this is what was found is that they both get it that women have the condition more. So this is a May 2025 national study. So that women, it was much more common in women. So 83% of the cases in this data set. But then men were the ones more likely to die from it.
mm,
Some of the stuff they talked about was like maybe it's they had more physical stressors, like they would have a stroke from it, and that could be more dangerous than on the female side, which might be more emotional and not
mhm.
as fatal. I'll have to go back and chat with my mom about that because it was one she just couldn't quite get, and I was thinking like, yeah, her points made a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's a really sad concept, but it happens.
Yeah,
And then you and I had been talking about just expectancy in general. I was looking up some of that, and CDC has life expectancy as of 2 years ago at about 75 for men and 81 for women, which is far greater than it used to be.
right. I think that in the 40s when Social Security came out, the average life expectancy was 62 for combined male and females. From that statistic, the life expectancy has increased 15 years over the last 85 years.
Yeah. And that gets us all into how does Social Security keep up with higher life expectancy, lower childbirth rates, therefore less in the labor force? It's just all these
Right.
interconnected considerations. I don't know what's going to happen. You and I had talked, and I was kind of hoping they would re-incentivize the elder population to go back to work without losing any Social Security, no matter what their income was.
Yeah,
I was,
for
let's
sure.
do that. Yeah.
For sure. I think that's a whole nother segment for us to talk about, working past 60 and what that looks like, because now that full Social Security benefits don't kick in till 70, what does a normal work life look like after 65? Are you still working your 60 hours a week like you were doing when you're in your 50s? Is that
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, great segment with your mom. Thank you for doing that. I know some of it was kind of tough to reminisce about, but I thought it was a beautiful way to tell your mom and dad's story. So,
Thank you. I
thank
told her after. I'm so happy I have that forever.
you. We look forward to next week.
Yeah, sounds good. All right.